Today on the Hobby Grotto we have a special episode looking at House Escher from Necromunda. And the reason this is a special episode is because this is a collaboration with Miguel from Rush the Wash. Miguel is a fantastic YouTuber and you should definitely check out his channel. He has a strong appreciation for the golden age of GW, also known as the 90s, and that was one of the themes that we were really kind of trying to bring across in this collaboration. We really wanted to exemplify the colours of the 90s and use that for inspiration where we could, something I'm a huge fan of and something that I think works particularly well for Necromunda. Before I even started, I'm blown away by these ridiculous sprues. There's really amazing detail on these miniatures, but I never thought I'd be making models with separate hair and faces. Now, I'm not as fast as Miguel when it comes to painting. I'm still learning how to rush the wash, so this video is going to focus on my test model for the warband with a single miniature tutorial, as is the style of the Grotto, and later on we'll look at some of the other miniatures I painted for the gang. I'm laying down the base coats here, and I really wanted a colour scheme which fit into our challenge of the 90s, which gave me so many different avenues, but I knew I wanted this scheme to be bright and colourful, and I also wanted to fit in the cyberpunk vibes that Necromunda is so famous for. So in the end, I couldn't think of anything more perfect than to base the colours on X-Men character Jubilee, particularly the cartoon version of Jubilee, which meant the primary colours of pink, yellow and blue. This is almost like bubblegum colours, I like to think. I actually really love all three of these primary colours, and I've used them before on projects, recently in fact on my Kyric Acolyte video, and I'm doing the pink in a similar way as you'll see as the video progresses. For the yellow, I'm doing my regular technique of working up from a mid-brown tone. XV88 is perfect for this. If you wanted to cut out some steps, you could base with the yellow like Averland Sunset, but I really like to have those underlying brown tones. Ahriman Blue is another lovely colour, and I think it's a bit more interesting than a regular blue. I'm using this for the gloves, as I like that idea more than having them with bare hands. Instead of just giving the metal bits a silver base, I'm mixing some Rhinox hide with Iron Warriors to give it a darker, grimier look. This will create some nice contrast for the brighter parts of the model too. I like the idea of giving these Escher girls some more individuality by each having their own unique hair colour. I'm using Naggaroth Knight here. I didn't want to go too crazy with this test model because I'm mainly trying to work out the other colours, so a purple hair for this kind of model, it's pretty standard. And it'll work nicely with the other colours. Classic shading technique here with Nuln oil over the whole model. You can't beat it. This is definitely one stage of the project where I rush the wash. Check out his channel. I'm doing the Drybrush on the metal now, so if I hit the other parts of the model I can cover it up with the subsequent layers. I don't use dry brushing too much as a technique, but it's just so good for metal, particularly these cool sculpted Necromunda bases. If you watch some of my other videos, you'll know I like to paint the eyes before I get into the nitty-gritty of the highlights. There's only one eye here to paint, which is always a good thing, because trying to match up those pupils is clearly the worst part of any eye painting job. The Nuln oil has darkened all our colour, so I always like to come back with all the base colours and bring back the saturation. This also creates the first level of highlights because the wash is left in all the recesses. This step isn't always 100% necessary, but I think it just makes your subsequent layers more consistent, so it's worth it. Now onto the highlight layers. I'm building up the yellow with Averland Sunset first, which is Games Workshop's best yellow I reckon. This paint has great coverage, but I'm still keeping it nice and thin in multiple layers. And now I'm brightening the yellow further with Yriel Yellow. If you want more of a muted yellow, you can mix bone in for the highlights, but I want this fabric to look futuristic and synthetic, so I don't want it looking too washed out. For the final edge highlights, I'm adding white scar mixed with Yriel Yellow for definition. I may have possibly gone too light here, but I can always glaze it later with yellow to bring back some colour if I want, we'll see. I've mixed a bit of Kislev flesh in here with the Screamer pink, because I think it creates a better tone than using something like white. Not too much, because we don't want it to go yellowy, but Kislev flesh really is a great colour for mixing highlights with. Whenever doing mixes like this, always test it on an area of the model that's less obvious, in case you need to adjust the shade. I'm mixing white with the previous colour for some edge highlights just because it's easier. I'm making sure I'm not getting too carried away with these because I don't want to change the original tone of the Screamer pink too much. Time to highlight the blue with a mix of Baharroth and Ahriman. The blue area is only small on this model, so I can afford to go up to a bit more of an extreme highlight with less blending here. The final highlight of pure Baharroth blue is just being concentrated on the extremities like the fingers, which are another focal point of models, so make sure you bring out your good highlights on those areas. The flesh on this model is another small but important area, and I always make sure my flesh paints are nicely watered down, because getting lumpy skin this late in the game is the nightmare scenario. The final highlight here is white mixed with Kislev flesh, concentrated on the nose and forehead as most of the other details on this face are obscured. I also painted the little lip piercing that I missed before. For some final attention on the hair, I'm mixing Naggaroth Night with White Scar in a couple of successive shades, and then just working that up to the tips. I still want to keep the hair darkish, so I'm trying not to get too carried away here. So that's my first Escher complete, and now I can base the rest of the gang on various adaptations of this scheme as I paint them over the coming months. I just absolutely love these colours, the pink and the blue and the yellow, the way they work together. And really it's taking me right back to the 90s as the goal of the collaboration was. Doing a collab like this with Miguel was such an awesome experience because we went along with each other on the journey, sharing tips and tricks along the way, and honestly his warband looks awesome, so don't forget to check out the video, the link is in the description below. Here are a couple more of the gang I've painted, trying to give them all a bit of unique variation. I've also got some cool ideas for conversions, so make sure you're keeping up to date on my Instagram to see the latest, I'll be putting them up there. As always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Hobby Grotto.